Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a late night book impressions video here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and today we'll be reading a book that is long overdue, the Avalon Assignment by author E.L.Grover. Now, this is what I would consider a novella or a novelette, but the story itself is really good. I read the entire thing, and if you're fans of Tom Clancy, you will definitely enjoy this book. And if you're also fans of Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, the campaign, you'll find some familiar themes in this, where Earth has now expanded into the galaxy, colonized other planets, and the people living on these planets no longer view Earth as their home. They view the planet of their birth, the ones they've colonized, I should say, as their homes and offer their allegiances alone. And in the Avalon Assignment, we have the debate of resources, loyalty, allegiances, which could be the same thing. Discussions of how media is portrayed in terms when it comes to conflicts such as these in the Avalon Assignment. And E.L.Grover does an amazing job getting very real, very technical. It reads very much like a video game. But if you enjoy the works of Tom Clancy like Rainbow Six, Jack Ryan, or the other stories of the Tom Clancy universe, you will definitely enjoy the Avalon Assignment. So without further ado, let's dive right in. Chapter 1. Shaik watched as the nurse finished checking the woman's vitals and handed her a glass of juice with orders to drink it all. She had not been abused, but she was malnourished. The pirates apparently had not understood her nutritional needs. Gamma Squadron had done her a favor in that alone. The file held little information. 3 swipes of his finger and he had reached the end. In the grand scheme, this woman was insignificant, an average person working a run-of-the-mill job on a colony world. Why did she become part of this group, let alone become a terrorist? His introspection was interrupted as the door opened. There was a scent of high-quality perfume preceding the bland-haired woman who entered. Her uniform was similar to his, though a different cut, showing the influence from her homeland of France. Colonel Shaik, studying your observations already. He greeted the woman with a smile. Major Rule, did we really travel all the way across UN space for this tiny thing? Shaik nodded and handed over the tablet. So it would be. How did she manage not to get shot? He smiled. You did not read the after-action report. I find Captain Jupiter's reports to be absolutely riveting. Why would I fail to read such a work of military art? Shaik clapped. It was true. The commander of Gamma Squadron could make the most mundane assignment take 30 pages and be as dry as a red wine. It was an art that Shaik was certain they trained into commanding officers. The report may have been made tedious to discourage reading. She surrendered, even after some of her allies beforehand, not that it did anything more than save Gamma the trouble of killing them. Rue nodded. Poor girl had probably not even pulled the trigger until she made that choice. She acted to protect her own boredom. That was likely the source of her strength at the moment. Now she has to live with it. Rather insightful, Shaik said. Have you spoken to her yet? Rue asked. No, I was waiting for the medical staff to be finished. Looks like they are. Let's begin, shall we? Shaik nodded. I think you should open the conversations. Shaik exited the room, giving a nod to the nurse in the hall. She tensed, eyeing him and Rue with soldier-like intensity. He gave a reassuring smile and held his hands above waist-high, palms toward her. The nurse stepped aside, allowing them into the room. Hello, Liana. Is that your name, correct? My name is Marie Rue. How are you feeling now? They've gotten some food. Liana looked wide-eyed as they entered. Shaik noticed she relaxed a bit at the question. After a moment of eyeing the glass on the table, she nodded. I feel like I'm gonna puke again. How far along? Rue asked with a smile, taking a seat at the table's edge. 6 months. Oh, a wonderful time. You can feel all the unpleasant kicks and turns. It also seems to be a good time for the baby to use your bladder to sleep on. Shaik was content to watch the exchange, as it gave him the opportunity to study Liana. She was lean and pale, but clean. The way she looked between him and Rue gave him the impression she wasn't going to be hiding anything intentionally. In his experience, this look indicated fear overtaking loyalty or reasoning. What will happen to me now? Shaik kept his voice pleasant and conversational. We will speak for a time, then let you rest if needed. Depending on how well our talk goes, you may only have to endure our company once or twice. After that, we will hold you until a local magistrate determines if you are to be charged with any crimes. I did nothing wrong. Rue reached out and patted the woman's hand on the table. We know. We must do it, though, dear. We must take every step to ensure we follow the laws. We? He could see Liana's hand tremble under Rue's hand. He knew Rue would keep her gentle touch and pat the girl's hand as she looked at her. Rue would then use that as a building block for more connections. If we don't, we will be seen as violating Tronis authority. Rue explained. We don't want that. We only wish what is best for all involved. I only went because my boyfriend did, Liana said. He said he could get us the money we needed for our own place, but he didn't want to leave me behind. Rue nodded. Noble of him. We were told that everybody had to contribute. At first I was confused, Liana said, but after I thought about it, I didn't mind contributing. Why didn't you mind it? Shaik asked. Liana shrugged. I wanted to feel helpful and need to keep active. Then I noticed these were no ordinary people. There was no standard company logo, no orientation classes, so I thought it was a private company, or independence. Not a poor thought process, Rue said. They had us all doing group workouts, training, taking turns doing chores, cooking, and all that sort of thing, Liana explained. I couldn't do certain things, and no one seemed bothered. They just laughed and patted me on the back, and the guns showed up. Shaik made some notes on his tablet, wondering just how effective local tracking satellites were. Solar systems could be treacherous places, with comets and drifting asteroids. They would need a sentry to catalog everything and verify the path of every object. Liana cried, and she continued. I tried to get him to take me home, to explain to him that this was something bad. These people were going to do something terrible to someone else. I didn't want to be a part of it, and I didn't want him to be. Rue nodded. We always want to see the best in our partners, even if they cannot see it themselves. He was a good man? Liana nodded, wiping away a tear. Yes, he worked a double shift at the port. He never came home later than the time it took to get home, while other dock hands would go to the bar or go to other places and find well. It's difficult for us, too. Rue held up a hand in his mouth. Ah, young love. I would have been quite happy with such a man. Mine had a habit of drinking and fighting, also visiting my sister before he had come home. Liana made a face. How would you settle that? With a kick to his groin and a slap to my sister's face, Rue said, grinning. Liana laughed. While Shaik noted she was no longer trembling and she remained steady, while pouring more juice. He absently went over the report again. He wasn't thrilled with the potential information. He was positive that they had uncovered a much deeper plot, though he still needed it cooperated. Where did the weapons come from? Shaik asked. Liana looked back at him and swallowed hard as he watched her expression and body language. She was uneasy, but she was going to tell him the truth. He knew the answer was bad with the return of fear in her voice. They were a mixed group. 2 Aldrich, the green kind that looked like Earth's old stories of aliens. They offered over the crates with no haggling, so I think they were already paid for. They had guards as well, she said. They had bodyguards? Who? Sazlan. Shaik could feel a shift in Rue's demeanor, as well as the glare she was giving him. He resisted the urge to smile and tell her she should have read the report. Self-preservation overrode his desire for a well-deserved taunt. He also knew that if they started to bicker, Liana would withdraw, and there would be more questions to ask. Liana, dear, Roos started. Did you observe any emblems on their uniforms or the ship that ferried them? She nodded. Yes. A trio of stars with 3 claws, one below the next. On the other side of the star was a single angel wing. Shaik nodded. That was on the uniforms, yes. What about the ship, dear? Rue asked quietly. It had a large star with some squiggly lines making a box around it. Shaik motioned to the door as he stood, offering an inclination of his head to Liana. He noticed Rue patted Liana on the hand and was smiling warmly. He figured she would retaliate by making him wait in the hall. You did great, child, Rue said. How old are you? 17. Rue smiled again and nodded. All right, dear. We're going to make some calls and discuss some things. I'll have the nurse take you to the observation unit so you can lie down and rest. Will you be back? Maybe. I know I'll have a few more questions, but I think they can wait until you've had your sleep. Once Rue joined him in the hall, he left simple instructions to have Liana taken somewhere to rest, then led the way to a secure office of the station. The office was for visiting officials and thus had a large window to see the colony below. Rue strode past him into the room, pacing in front of the window. Shaik briefly imagined her as an angry tiger and reminded himself to handle her with care. They had a long history, but he knew her temper well. The door clicking into place was a perfect catalyst. Zut! Rue growled. Putain de Shezlan! Shaik laughed. Do you always go in your native tongue to curse? Oui. It's more colorful and accurate. He nodded and sat down, looking at his tablet as it bleeped. Well, it just got worse. Rue spun again. How? The journalist with Gamma Squadron? He sent his editor a copy of the reporting video. Merde! Rue tossed up her hands. Look at this, he said, turning the tablet around. Rue looked, and her eyes widened. The screen displayed the emblems Liana had described, an angel wing joined by 3 claws by a trio of stars, the symbol of the Prize of Violet Special Operations Unit, on a uniform being worn by a human. Mon Dieu, she whispered. Are they trying to start another war? Maybe. I think first they're going to destabilize the colonies. Chapter 2. Eversley crawled the last few meters to the fence, peering through the dark and grass around the rocks to watch for the foot patrol. He felt Granberg tap his foot, signaling he was moving up to his side. He glanced for a second, then back to watching for the patrol. Overwatch, for 2-2, I have you at the fence line. The patrol is coming around the far corner. Still one pace, 12 seconds, came Andrew's voice. Eversley keyed the radio. Copy. He motioned to Granberg, and both made the careful movement to come into a squatting position. Eversley pulled out his combat knife and made ready, silently counting, though he knew Andrews would call it out. A steady breath, and then he saw his target come into view. They're in position, Andrews said into his ear. There was no signal, no verbal call to action between them. He and Granberg simply launched their attack in unison. Eversley came up and felt the moment of resistance as his blade drove into the target's neck, just under the jaw. They fell limp as he wrapped an arm around the body and pulled them into the weeds. He laid them down, looking at Granberg and blinked. The man was laying his target down, one of his handheld axes embedded in their faces. He shrugged back and pulled his second as he watched for any stray targets. 2-2 to 2-1. We are clear. Going to cut in now, Eversley said over the encrypted radio. 2-1, good copy. We are likewise making entry, came Holt's reply. Eversley motioned and Granberg started the rest of the way to the fence with his laser cutter. It would take only a few seconds to have a hole large enough for them to pass through. While waiting, he slung his rifle and took up Overwatch. A moment later, he felt a tap on Granberg, then moved through the hole in the fence. They moved to a nearby corner of a building and looked inside the camp. There was no movement. It was late, so they figured most would be in bed. The leadership might still be meeting, hopefully in person with someone who had been providing them aid. 2-2 for 2-1. We are inside. Good copy, so are we. Move to target building. You should be able to see it from there. Eversley peered around the corner. Yep, I see it. 2 guards out back. The 2 men were standing near the door, not against the building. Obviously, he could smell a cigarette one was smoking through his suit's environmental sensors. He could block it, but there was no need in this case. Besides, using all his senses helped. We got 2 out front as well. Lights are on too, Holt said. Andrew's waiting over the line. Overwatch here. Hungry Eyes is showing 5 people inside. Thermal has them all sitting in the central room, each one of them taking turns at the front. Looks like a briefing if I had to guess. Good, came Holt's voice. Let's hope we can catch their benefactor in there. Move up, clear the sentries, and prepare for entry. Eversley nodded and tapped Granberg on the shoulder. The man came around his right side, bringing up his rifle and similarly peering around the corner. With their helmets and clothes, they could speak, but noise discipline kept them silent and using sign language out of habit. He made a count with his free hand, keeping his other ready to squeeze the trigger. He closed his fist and moved around the corner, with Granberg at his side. They moved silently towards the door and the guards, who were busy chatting and exchanging the cigarette. He and Granberg got to 3 meters before one of them looked their way. Too late, Eversley thought to himself as he squeezed out a controlled burst of fire. They used a modified coil gun set to subsonic speed. The clatter hardly registered in his ears and was unlikely to draw attention. Still, he winced at the sound. The model was perfectly designed for this sort of operation, but had almost no ability to penetrate body armor, leaving him to feel vulnerable. Granberg had fired as well, taking his down the same instant. They closed the door, and Eversley briefly whispered a prayer of thanks. The 2 had fallen away from the building and not struck it. Once he and Granberg were in position, he whispered into his comm. 2-2 at the door. Copy. 2-1 as well. Prepare for breach. And with that, we will stop here. So, as I said in the beginning, this book reads very much like a Tom Clancy Rainbow Six story, or even Ghost Recon from the Tom Clancy video games. This is an amazing story, and E.L.Grover nails it. And if you want to see my interview with Grover, check out this link right here in the description below. Until next time, this is the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out.